Arthur, aqui é um exame.
Dress your wheelies.
5 years ago, the World Bank predicted that Brazil would have 1,200,000 people infected with HIV/AIDS. The Brazilian government responded with a series of bold moves involving the health service and citizens groups across the nation.
Vista seu pinto.
The number of HIV/AIDS carriers forecast for Brazil has been halved.
Ah, pra você vestir seu pinto.
Dress your
Aí vai
wheelies.
usar a camisinha pra quê?
Do you know what condoms are for?
Não. Você já transa?
Are you having sex?
Transa?
Well,
Se você
are you?
transa, eu lhe dou. E se você não transa aí...
No?
Aí eu lhe dou um.
Well, if you never use it, take this condom and practice on your own.
Quando você já usou, então...
So just how is Brazil succeeding in its war against AIDS? We've travelled to Recife, capital of the state of Pernambuco in the northeast of Brazil. It's one of the regions hardest hit by the AIDS epidemic. Most of the 600,000 people in Brazil carrying the HIV/AIDS virus don't know they've got it.
Juazeiro não te lembra daquele dia de sol. Você distante aqui, eu sei que eu estou só.
The first that Emerson knew he'd developed full-blown AIDS was when 5 years ago he collapsed with a high fever. He was near death when doctors treated him with a cocktail of medicines, including Brazilian-made antiretroviral drugs.
Que foi a tuberculose ganglionar, onde eu perdi mais de 20 quilos.
I had ganglion tuberculosis. There seemed to be no way out. I was really debilitated. I couldn't even sunbathe. My mother was taking care of me 24 hours a day. My family were already planning the funeral.
Para eles não tinha solução. Nesses quase 5 anos que eu tomo o coquetel, né? Eu sempre recebi
When I go to the
gratuitamente,
pharmacy,
todos os meses eu
I
vou
get the drugs for
consultar,
free.
Consulto, vou na farmácia, eles me dão os 3 tipos de remédios.
I've been taking the drug
quatro
cocktail for
coquetel,
5 years
e
without
eu
missing a
recebi todos
single
os meses sem
dose.
falta.
Maria is 27 and HIV positive. Last year, her former husband died of AIDS. She had a 3-year-old son who also died, of liver disease complicated by an HIV-related infection. She's since given birth to her daughter, Elena.
Quando eu peguei o resultado, que eu achava que...
When I was told I had HIV, I didn't understand what it meant. I thought it was a death sentence and that the world would end there and then.
Muito baixo. Depois que eu comecei a tomar medicação, eu pego já a minha medicação no hospital.
My white blood cell count was already dangerously low. They gave me free medication at the hospital.
Se não pegasse de graça, assim...
If they didn't do that, I would never have been able to pay for it. And without those medicines, I wouldn't be here today holding my daughter.
Segurando a minha filha.
Maria cannot breastfeed her baby because of the risk of transmission of HIV. She was given ARVs, antiretroviral drugs, during her pregnancy to protect the baby. She still doesn't know if she's clear. Without the antiretroviral drugs, it's unlikely that Maria and Emerson would be alive today.
It helps not to think of these medicines as a drug cocktail. They are easier to take if you pretend they are beauty pills.
Next to prevention, triple drug therapy is the best answer available at the present time to combat HIV/AIDS. All life consists of the same building blocks that make up the molecular chain known as DNA. What distinguishes one form of life from another is the code, or unique sequencing of building blocks in the DNA chain. Roughly speaking, HIV reproduces itself by invading the genetic material in the body's white blood cells and breaking it up. It then combines with the genetic material, inserting its own code. The result is a new DNA chain, which is no longer human, but a replica of HIV. The so-called retrovirus can now go on to reinfect other cells in the same way. The destruction of the white blood cells leaves the body open to the opportunistic infections seen in full-blown AIDS. Antiretroviral drugs slow down the action of HIV to indetectable levels. In 1997, Brazil made a political commitment to make these drugs available to everyone who needed them. But in order to do so, Brazil would have to obtain the drugs at a price it could afford. So Brazil started making its own generic medicines, cheaper copies of brand-name drugs. Eloa Pinheiro is director of the FAR Manguinhos Drug Production and Research Facility in Rio.
Eu acredito que qualquer país
Any country with the political will could do this,
fazer esses medicamentos,
because these drugs are actually not hard to make.
eles não são difíceis de serem feitos. Eles precisam
It just needs a strong health minister, as we have, who is solidly behind the free drugs program.
Nós conseguimos
We managed to bring down the cost of many of the components in the AIDS cocktail by around 70%.
Integrantes do coquetel da AIDS em cerca de 70%, produzindo-os localmente.
These are products that don't come under our patent law because Brazilian patent law only came into force in 1997.
Ela vem de 1997.
Drugs predating this law are effectively unpatented in Brazil, leaving it free to manufacture them. Brazil is breaking the virtual price monopoly enjoyed under world trade agreements by the major pharmaceutical companies. They've complained about Brazil's action.
dos mais fortes argumentos da empresa é que se
The drug companies say they need to charge high prices in Latin America and Africa to pay for research into new drugs, and that if they were to lower their prices to the poor countries, they would lose heavily.
Mas na verdade, o mercado
In truth, the global drug business is worth $300 billion, and 82% of this market is made up of sales in the USA, Europe, and Japan. 82%.
82%, quer dizer, América Latina e
Latin America and the other markets of the world make up only 18%. So how is it then that we poor countries can cause so much harm to these companies with our share of the market? It doesn't make sense. I ask you.
Não dá para entender.
We don't have a global agreement for the global happiness. We have some agreements and we have some interests that developed countries particularly are trying to maintain as probably a way to maintain their happiness. Okay.
Pressed by influential drug companies, the United States government recently threatened to make an official complaint about Brazil at the World Trade Organization. The US argued that Brazil was not complying with the WTO's rules, under which Brazil would have to apply for what's known as a compulsory license each time it wanted to make or import a generic medicine. Amid adverse publicity, the US withdrew its case at the WTO. Instead, a joint statement was issued on June the 29th, 2001, in which Brazil agreed it would consult with the US before producing more generic drugs. But it's only a temporary truce. We went to the Correio Picanso Hospital in Recife to meet one of Brazil's most experienced HIV/AIDS specialists, Dr. Frederico Rangel. Dr. Rangel showed us his war chest of AIDS medicines. About half are produced in Brazil, and the pharmaceuticals companies have drastically reduced prices of their drugs that predate Brazil's patent law. Brazil would otherwise have started to produce these too.
E nós estamos conseguindo, haja vista, laboratório Merck
Laboratories pulled down the price of this drug called Stockrin by about 75%, making it worth our while importing directly from the labs. But now there's a new drug on the market called Coletra, and people are demanding access to it. So the fight for drugs goes on. Today is for Coletra, just as yesterday was for Stockrin and Varicept. So the fight will go on in the future, for other drugs too.
O que o Brasil está lutando
Brazil is fighting for access to drugs to fight AIDS for all its people. This policy has resulted in controversy at international forums. So we've put our case to the world and we fought for it. And what is our case? It is that access to medicines is a basic human right.
De que a questão de medicamentos é assimilável a dos direitos humanos.
Maria's baby Elena is due for a checkup to see if the antiretroviral drugs her mother took during pregnancy have worked. In the first of 3 tests, doctors found no sign of HIV. Today, Maria will find out the results of the second test.
The second result is negative, so together with the first test, there's a 99% chance that your baby is clear.
It's not yet an all clear, but the signs are very good.
Já em 95, nós já começamos a oferecer o teste para a gestante infectada pelo
We
HIV.
started scanning pregnant women for HIV in 1995 and offered antiretrovirals to those who tested positive, so to avoid mother-to-child transmission. With these drugs and all the precautions, we've managed to pull the mother-to-child transmission of HIV down from around 30% to less than 0.2%.
Para hoje em dia nós falamos 0 a 2%.
Even when we are spending more than $300 million in drugs for HIV people each year, we are saving much more than this because we don't have any more hospitalizations. We are not using other drugs, so many quantities of drugs for opportunistic infection and for other health problems. And because we have people working, people with their families, people producing and being autosufficient. This at the end means for the state save money.
Just across the street from the hospital is a voluntary group dedicated to helping HIV-positive mothers.
Olha, eu vou fazer isso. Me ligue daqui a...
Maria's been coming for counselling ever since the death of her first child.
Their help has been really important for me over these past few years, ever since finding out I had HIV.
Voluntary organisations fill in the gaps Brazil's medical system is unable to cover. This group was formed by a woman whose child died of AIDS, contracted through an infected blood transfusion.
Rashid para mim nunca morreu, né? Eu posso tê-lo vivo. For me, he didn't die. He's alive in my feelings, deep inside of me. With this work, it's as if he lives on, through the lives of those children we help. I want them to have the chance of having things he never had.
We have now more than 600 NGOs working in Brazil and conducting more than 1,000 projects in all the areas: prevention, care, social mobilization, and also monitoring the governmental response. For us, this is one of the main components of the Brazilian responses and one of the better answers to the question why the Brazilian model is now getting so many good results.
Once a week, Emerson attends a massage workshop for people with HIV.
Being touched is the best therapy. It's the best gesture of solidarity and support you can have if you've got HIV. You feel more human when your body is massaged, touched without any discrimination. It's wonderful for a HIV carrier being made to feel relaxed and secure.
I'm losing all my muscles and the fat from my face has disappeared. It's called lipodystrophy. But I'm not going to stop taking the medicine, and I'm going to go for physiotherapy.
For those suffering side effects from the triple cocktail drugs, and they can be serious, there's a regular discussion group. Ronaldo has had several narrow escapes from death with opportunistic infections. He's also having trouble coping with the side effects from the triple cocktail.
Bananas are good to combat side effects, especially, for example, with zidovudine, which gives you diarrhea. That's my advice to you. Eat as many as possible, and as wide a variety as you can find. The more bananas, the better.
And they help you to regain your muscles.
Groups like this are helping people stick to the often debilitating drug regime. And the results show adherence rates in Brazil are the same as those in the USA.
I have lipodystrophy too. It's complicated because body fat completely disappears from some parts of the body and it all collects in one single part. I've always exercised and here I am with a fat belly. I never had a fat belly in my life. Despite all the exercises, the stomach fat doesn't go away.
Dr. Angel has looked after Ronaldo for the past 11 years. His experience indicates a disturbing trend among those affected by HIV/AIDS.
AIDS is becoming a disease of the poor, and it's reaching further and further into the interior of the country. The further it goes, the worse the situation. And there is a new group. It's married women. We used to see 30 or 40 men to one woman with HIV. Now it's 1 to 1, and in some places it's 1 man to 2 women.
Brazil is a vast country, and it's the voluntary groups who are reaching out to ever more remote communities being hit by AIDS. Geronimo's organisation works with HIV/AIDS victims isolated 800 kilometres or more into the interior.
We are going to visit an HIV patient. She's having difficulties getting one of her infected children to the hospital once or twice a month for treatment. Her husband died, leaving her pregnant with 4 children to take care of. So she's now living in poverty with 5 small children. Ivanilda! Ivanilda, my friend. Come and give us a hug. I brought some friends here with me. How's this girl? Can I come in? So, how did you find out you were infected in the first place?
It was when my husband got ill, when he was put into hospital. If he had survived, I wouldn't have known anything about it.
So you're now waiting to see if the children are infected.
Se ele tivesse vivo, ainda tivesse força para se reagir, eu ainda não ia saber que eu estava doente.
Ela está sob investigação.
They're being tested.
Não é? E o Ivan está certo, sob investigação para ver se tem.
Não sei que ele deve preocupação, Jerônimo, mas eu sinto umas dores de cabeça.
Dores de cabeça?
Dores de cabeça com vontade de vômito.
Yes, and I've been getting headaches and vomiting with the drugs. They make me feel dizzy.
Normal, eu fico tonta mesmo. Uma dor de cabeça que me passa, me deixa passada mesmo.
Isso são efeitos normais.
These are pretty common side
Eu
effects.
disse, meu Deus, será que é por causa do...
Yes, I thought that. Oh my God, that's because of the medicine.
Não, Deus me livre.
But you're taking the pills, aren't you?
Yes, of course, I'm still taking them.
Don't stop.
Mesmo a gente sabendo que não é por...
I know very well, it's not for the rest of my life. Maybe I can go on for another year or two.
Não, a quantidade de anos...
No, it's not like that. The number of years you have will depend on your own efforts to take care of yourself.
But there's also the food problem, because I haven't been eating very well. I've been paying to rebuild the house.
Eva's house has been rebuilt with Geronimo's help. The old house blew down in a rainstorm.
Pobreza mesmo, miséria.
Poverty really is the root of most of the problems here. And poor people have the hardest time with this disease. And food is an important problem.
Quanto melhor alimentado,
If you eat properly, the drugs will be more effective and you'll start feeling better. And you'll find the side effects will not be so strong.
Forte, mais resistente. Vamos melhorar pouquinho essa alimentação, vamos tentar, né? Ver como a gente melhora isso aí.
Aí eu vou dizer o quê?
I know. Either spend the money on food or on the house. The children are hungry. I can't try and find work with the baby. I'm trying my hand at fishing.
E onde eu vou é no mangue, pesca. Porque se não tiver uma carne, ele não vem comer.
If you don't put meat in this, it doesn't work. At least I can take care of them like this, and we can live.
Mas também não é o suficiente para levar a vida. Agora a gente vamos entrar no aceiro.
Na zona rural complica mais
The difficulty of living here and the isolation make it harder for people to stick to the treatment.
Uma dor intensa, ânsia de vômito. Então ele por si só ele suspende a medicação.
Por Deus ter lhe feito o corpo bem feito, meu Deus, obrigado.
Even in the more poor country in the world, people, affected people, know that there is a treatment available.
Se eu soubesse o dia que você morria, eu morria também. Você não...
That they and their family and their friends can survive if they have access to drugs. So, triple therapy has meant mobilizing people to demand the right to have access to the treatment available in developed countries.
Porque as pessoas que tomam medicamentos,
when you give people the proper treatment, it humanizes them. It improves their self-esteem and self-love. This is very important. If you treat people this way, it helps prevent the spread of HIV.
Você não entendia muito, eu pensava muito
I've changed. I used to only think of myself. I never thought about helping others. Now I'm a better person. I don't think like that anymore.
Jair hoje é mais solidário, Jair hoje faz mais amizade.
I have a different outlook on life.
Jair hoje
I'm able to make more friends.
olhar diferente do que olhava antes.
I care about others and their problems as if they were my
Sem
own.
interesses e sim querendo ajudar as pessoas.
I want everyone seeing this film who's prejudiced to know that HIV is a disease like any other. So forget your prejudice. It's happened to me, and it could happen to any one of you. It's a disease like any other, and prejudice is almost worse than the disease.
Seu riso me encanta e você não é...